I'd been reincarnated as the biggest simp in a dime a dozen web novel. The kind of guy who was richer than God, but threw it all away for his ice queen fiancée, only to get stomped to death by the story's real hero. A total tool. Right now, the story was just kicking off. My fiancée, the ice queen herself, was staring me down with that signature frozen glare of hers. And me? I had just, in front of her very eyes, tossed $1 million engagement ring into the trash can. Ethan, are you done with this tantrum? Sophia Sterling's voice was like a polar vortex straight out of the Arctic, completely devoid of warmth. She stood in the middle of the living room, her designer power suit accentuating a figure that was as sharp as her ambition. Her face, once dubbed a various cities' untouchable beauty, was now a mask of irritation and disgust. I ignored her. I was sprawled on the couch, lazily swirling the contents of a heavy crystal tumbler. It wasn't some 82 Lafite. It was 100 proof bourbon, a golden fire that burned a clean path down my throat. I let out a sigh of pure satisfaction. Damn, that felt good. Before I woke up here, I've been pulling a 72-hour shift trying to land a project. The moment I closed my eyes, I opened them again as this chump, Ethan Grant, who just happened to share my name. This guy was sitting on a multi-billion-dollar fortune, yet he groveled at Sophia Sterling's feet like a stray dog. A single word from her, and he'd drive through a hurricane to get a pastry she casually mentioned. A slight frown, and he'd buy out the company that annoyed her. All to make her happy. He was even willing to step aside again and again when her destined one, the novel's original protagonist, Caleb Vance, showed up, only to be crushed under Caleb's heel, his family bankrupt, his death miserable. Remembering the plot made my stomach churn. What a load of crap. I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? Sophia's voice sharpened, seeing me ignore her, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows knitted together. In her world, I was the puppy she could summon and dismiss with a wave of her hand. Now, the puppy was daring to ignore its master. I slowly sat up, downed the rest of the bourbon in one go, and picked up the velvet box from the coffee table. I opened it and pinched the colossal pink diamond between my fingers. A rock. A custom Cartier piece worth $1.3 million. The original Ethan had flown to Paris just to win this at auction, all for a smile from his precious Sophia. A smile he never got. She'd never once worn it. What are you trying to do now? Sophia watched me, her eyes filled with wary suspicion, as if she expected me to launch into another pathetic, heart-on-my-sleeve declaration of love. I smirked. Then, right in front of her stunned face, I flicked my wrist. Whoosh! The pink diamond carved a glittering arc through the air. Clink! A soft sound. It landed squarely in the designer trash can in the corner of the room. The penthouse fell completely, deathly silent. Sophia's eyes widened, the first crack appearing on that perpetually frozen facade. She stared at the trash can as if she'd just witnessed the impossible. You. Her voice trembled. Are you insane? Insane. I chuckled, getting to my feet and walking toward her one slow step at a time. I was a good head taller than her, and as I closed the distance, her usual aura of untouchable arrogance began to crumble. She even took an instinctive half-step back. That tiny movement filled me with an immense sense of satisfaction. Sophia, I said, stopping right in front of her. I leaned in slightly, looking directly into her eyes, which were now flickering with panic. As of today, I said, enunciating every word, you're a free woman. Our engagement is off. Without another glance at her, I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, there was a long, suffocating silence. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, Sophia's shrill voice finally broke the quiet. Ethan Grant, who do you think you're playing games with? Trying to get my attention with these childish theatrics? Let me tell you, it's pathetic. You better pick that ring up and put it on my finger right now, or else. Or else what? I turned back, a playful smile on my face. Or else you'll agree to marry me. Don't bother, Ms. Sterling. It's not that I'm not good enough for you. I paused for effect. It's that you're not good enough for me. That line hit her like a sledgehammer. The color drained from her face, the hand pointing at me, trembling violently. What? What did you just say? She probably never imagined, not in her wildest dreams, that the man who once worshipped the ground she walked on would say something so blasphemous. I said, I pulled the door open, the bright sunlight outside making me squint, that you, Sophia Sterling, and your entire family had better stay the hell out of my way. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind making you disappear from a various city. Bang! I slammed the door shut, leaving her face, a canvas of shock, rage, and humiliation on the other side. Stepping out of that suffocating penthouse, I took a deep breath. The air smelled of freedom. From this day on, I was no longer that pathetic simp side character. I was Ethan Grant, the hero of my own story. As for the novel's original hero, Caleb Vance, who was due to make his grand entrance soon. Some ex-Special Forces operator living in his own little world. I couldn't wait to see the look on his face when he discovered just how laughable his precious fists and medical skills were in the face of the real, absolute power I represented. The rules of this world? Starting now, I make them. I didn't go to any of the mansions listed under my name. Instead, I grabbed an Uber and headed for a different kind of place. North Side, the food truck row. 9 p.m. The place was buzzing. The air was a thick, intoxicating mix of barbecue smoke, chili, and cheap beer. The cacophony of loud conversations, shouting, and clinking bottles was alive, raw, and real. It beat the hell out of that gilded cage of a penthouse. I found a spot at a makeshift table outside a barbecue joint and yelled to the sweaty, shirtless guy manning the grill. Hey, a full rack of ribs, 2 dozen wings, a basket of loaded fries, and give me a bucket of ice-cold beers. You got it, the owner shouted back. Soon enough, the food and a bucket of sweating longnecks arrived. I popped one open and chugged half of it down, the icy liquid cutting through the last bit of frustration in my chest. As I was tearing into a rib, enjoying this long overdue moment of peace, the conversation from the next table caught my ear. You hear? That big development downtown, Apex Global snagged it. For real? I thought a bunch of firms were after that piece of land. Heard even Sterling Corporation was all in. Sterling Corp? Please. Apex has some serious muscle behind them. I heard their CEO had to go kiss the ring of Mac Costello to close the deal. Mac? Which Mac? Who else? The king of a various city's underworld, Mac Costello. They say if Mac gives the nod, there's nothing you can't get done in this city. I paused mid-bite, a slow grin spreading across my face. Matt Costello. I knew that name. In the original novel, he was a loyal hound for the Grant family, a ruthless crime lord who'd clawed his way up from the gutter and ruled the city's shadows with an iron fist, but he was unshakably loyal to my family. The original Ethan, that idiot, had this ace up his sleeve and never used it. He thought Mac was too thuggish and deliberately kept his distance. It wasn't until the Grant family was on the verge of collapse that Mac stepped in to protect him, only to be beaten to death by the protagonist, Caleb Vance. A tragic, but respectable, character. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the contacts until I found a number that hadn't been dialed in years. The contact name was Uncle Mac. The phone rang 3 times before it was picked up. Yeah. A gravelly, slightly confused voice came through the line. He was clearly surprised to be hearing from me. Mac, it's Ethan Grant, I said coolly. The line went silent for a second. Then I heard the sound of a sharp, excited intake of breath. Mr. Grant? Sir? To what do I owe the honor? His voice was laced with a hint of humility, like he couldn't believe his luck. Business, I said, cutting to the chase. I'm on the north side, Rick's Barbecue. Get your best guys and get here in 30 minutes. Yes, sir. Mac didn't ask why. His tone was firm, radiating absolute obedience. I hung up and went back to my beer. Sophia Sterling, did you really think that without you, Ethan Grant was nothing? You and your self-important family are about to find out exactly what you threw away. Just as I was finishing my 3rd beer, the screech of tires and a sudden commotion shattered the lively atmosphere of the food truck row. Get the hell out of my way. Don't you know who I am? A loud, obnoxious voice boomed. He glanced over. A young guy in a gaudy silk shirt and a thick gold chain had just kicked over a nearby table, sending beer bottles crashing to the ground and splashing food all over a young couple. Behind him stood 7 or 8 tattooed thugs who looked like they gargled with gravel. The couple whose table was overturned were pale with fear. The guy summoned his courage and stood up. Hey man, what's your problem? My problem? The guy in the silk shirt sneered, stepping forward and patting the kid's face condescendingly. My problem is I'm in a bad mood, and slapping you around sounds like fun. Say one more word, and I'll have you carried out of here. You feel me?" The other customers looked on, angry but silent, quickly lowering their heads. Rick, the barbecue joint owner, rushed over, a nervous smile plastered on his face. "Mister, Kane, please calm down. This table's on me. It's all on the house. Get lost." The guy, apparently named Kane, backhanded Rick across the face, sending him stumbling. "You think I need a handout from a peasant like you?" His eyes scanned the area and finally landed on my table. More specifically, on empty seats at my table. "Hey, you," he pointed at me with his chin. "Scram. The big boys are taking this table." I didn't even look up. I just picked up a chicken wing, blew on it, and took a bite. Perfect. Seeing me ignore him, Kane's face darkened. "What, are you deaf?" One of his tattooed goons immediately stepped forward, his massive hand reaching for my shoulder. "Hey, punk, mister. Kane is talking to you." I still didn't move, just as his fingers were about to touch my shirt. "Stop right there." A sharp, commanding voice cut through the air like a thunderclap. Along with the shout, a sleek figure pushed through the crowd. It was a woman. A crisp police uniform hugged a figure that was all dangerous curves. Her dark hair was pulled back in a high ponytail, and her sharp, beautiful face was set in a stern expression, her eyes flashing with authority. A name surfaced in my memory, Isabella Rossi. Detective Isabella Izzy Rossi, deputy head of a various city PD's major crimes unit. A cop famous for her fiery temper and formidable combat skills. In the original novel, she and Caleb Vance had a classic hate-at-first-sight relationship that eventually led to her joining his harem. Never thought I'd run into her here. Izzy's appearance immediately deflated the arrogance of Kane and his crew. Detective Rossi. The muscle on Kane's face twitched as he forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "What are you doing here?" "It's all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Izzy scoffed, her gaze sweeping over the overturned table and the terrified couple. "Disturbing the peace, assault. Braden Kane, just because your father is Warren Kane doesn't mean I can't touch you." Braden Kane, the only son of real estate mogul Warren Kane. A textbook spoiled brat. Being called out by name made Braden's face flush, but he didn't dare talk back. He just kept smiling nervously. "Detective, I was just out having a bite with some friends. Maybe had a little too much to drink, got a bit loud." Having a bite? Izzy's eyes fell on me, then on the goon whose hand was still frozen in midair. "Is he one of your friends, too?" Braden froze, following her gaze, and finally remembering the disrespectful punk at the table. An idea sparked in his eyes, and he immediately played the victim. "Detective, you have to help me. I was just trying to be friendly, asking if we could share a table, and this guy starts insulting me. My buddy here just got a little heated, that's all." He could spin a lie like a pro. The surrounding customers shot him looks of contempt, but no one dared to speak up. Izzy's brow furrowed. She looked at me, her expression skeptical. "Is that what happened?" I finally put down the wing, wiped my mouth slowly with a napkin, and then looked up, meeting her gaze. "No," I said, my voice flat. My calmness seemed to surprise her. For Braden, it was a direct challenge to his ego. "The hell it wasn't," he exploded, pointing a finger at my nose. "Don't push your luck, asshole. One phone call from me, and you'll never work in this city again." "Oh," I raised an eyebrow. "I am terrified." My completely unfazed, mocking demeanor was the spark that lit his fuse. "You're dead," he roared, swinging a fist straight at my face. Izzy's expression changed, and she moved to intervene. But someone else was faster. "BM," a dull thud echoed. Braden's fist was caught, stopped dead in its tracks by a large, calloused hand that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Then a gravelly, ice-cold voice spoke right next to his ear. "You dare touch my boss? Are you trying to die?" Braden froze. Izzy froze. Everyone froze. They saw a middle-aged man in an impeccably tailored black suit standing beside me, his face grim. Behind him, dozens of men in identical black suits stood in silent, disciplined ranks. They were all built like tanks, their eyes sharp, radiating a quiet menace like a pack of tigers ready to pounce. The entire street was suddenly blanketed in a heavy, oppressive silence. The once noisy food truck row was now terrifyingly quiet. "M. Mac. Costello." Braden stared at the man holding his wrist, his voice trembling so hard his teeth chattered. The blood drained from his face. Even he was smart enough to recognize the man his own father had to bow and scrape to, the undisputed king of a various city's underworld, Mac Costello. Mac ignored him, releasing his wrist and turning to me with a respectful bow. "Sir, sorry I'm late." That single word, "sir," landed like a sonic boom, ringing in everyone's ears. Braden's eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. He stared at me in disbelief, then back at Mac, his lips trembling, unable to form a single word. Izzy's sharp, intelligent eyes were also wide with shock and confusion. She couldn't connect the dots between the college-aged kid in front of her and the sir that had Mac Costello bowing his head. The other customers held their breath, terrified. They were finally realizing what kind of monster they'd been sharing a street with. I ignored everyone else and just looked at Mac and his crew of professionals, nodding in satisfaction. "Not late at all. Your timing is perfect." I stood up and walked over to the petrified Braden Kane. I raised my hand and gently patted his stiff cheek. "Mr. Kane, wasn't it?" I. Braden's teeth were chattering uncontrollably. "A moment ago, you told me to scram." "No, never. Sir, I'm blind. I'm the one who should scram. I'll get out of here right now." Braden dropped to his knees with a thud and started frantically slapping his own face. Smack, smack, smack. The crisp sounds echoed loudly in the silent night. I smiled and turned to Mac. "Uncle Mac, he said he wants a roll." Mac understood immediately. His eyes went cold. "You heard him. The boss wants you to roll. So roll. Don't use your legs." "I don't like it." The next second, two of the men in black stepped forward, grabbed the weeping Braden Kane, and began dragging him and his equally terrified goons out of the area like a sack of garbage. A long, pathetic trail was scraped into the pavement behind them. After it was done, Mac turned back to me. The respect in his eyes had now transformed into something akin to zealous worship. He knew that the young master he had once been disappointed in, the one he thought was a lost cause, had changed. He had become decisive, authoritative, a true leader. This was the rightful heir to the Grant family. "Sir, what are your orders?" I looked at the mess at the barbecue joint and said to the terrified owner, "Rick, whatever the damages are, I'll pay you 10 times over." Then I turned to Izzy. She was still in a state of shock, her hand hovering over the butt of her service pistol. I gave her a wide, friendly smile. "Detective, don't be so tense. I'm just taking out the trash." Izzy's pupils contracted. She stared at me, her eyes filled with suspicion and a deep, searching curiosity. As a seasoned detective, she'd seen her share of vicious criminals and arrogant elites. But she had never met anyone like me. I looked like a harmless kid from next door, my smile almost boyish. But the ruthless efficiency I had just displayed and the cold indifference in my voice when I said taking out the trash sent a chill down her spine. This man was extremely dangerous. "Who are you?" Izzy's voice was low, betraying a hint of nervousness. "Me?" I spread my hands. "Just a law-abiding citizen." "Law-abiding?" Izzy almost laughed. "Bringing dozens of men to intimidate people on the street is law-abiding." "Detective, where did you see me intimidate anyone?" I asked with an innocent expression. "I just invited some friends out for a barbecue." It was Mr. Kane who insisted on kneeling and begging for my forgiveness. I couldn't stop him. People are so dramatic these days, aren't they? "You." Izzy was rendered speechless by my shameless excuse, her chest heaving. She knew I was twisting the truth, but technically I hadn't laid a hand on anyone or even said a threatening word. Braden had been dragged away by Mac's men, and Mac was just a friend of mine. She had no legal grounds to arrest me on the spot. Mac Costello is a known figure in a various cities' organized crime scene. You'd better think carefully about the consequences of associating with him, she warned sharply. Organized crime? I acted as if I'd heard the funniest joke in the world and turned to Mac. "Uncle Mac, the detective says you're in the mafia." Mac immediately stood up straight, his face a mask of righteous indignation. "Detective, you can't just slander an honest man. Mac Costello, am a legitimate businessman. I own over a dozen security firms, all registered with the state, paying millions in taxes every year. I've even sponsored scholarships for dozens of underprivileged kids. The city even gave me a Distinguished Entrepreneur Award." Izzy's face was practically green. She knew damn well that Mac had been laundering his reputation for years, and on paper, he was clean. But everyone in a various city knew what he did in the shadows. Knowing and proving were two different things. Fine. Very fine. Izzy took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She pulled out a small notepad. Name, driver's license, for my report. I shrugged and gave her my information. When Izzy heard the name Ethan Grant and saw the face on my ID, which matched the one from the high-profile engagement announcement photos with Sophia Sterling, she froze again. You're that guy from the Grant Corporation. She didn't finish, but her meaning was clear. The guy famous throughout a various city as Sophia Sterling's #1 simp. Her expression became a complex mixture of disdain, confusion, and a flicker of understanding. So that's how it was. He was throwing the Grant family's weight around. No wonder even Matt Costello was so deferential. But the weak, spineless heir who was supposedly at Sophia Sterling's beck and call was nothing like the man standing before her. That's me, I admitted freely, then smiled back at her. Detective, are you done with the background check? If there's nothing else, can we get back to our barbecue? The wings are getting cold. Izzy looked at my calm, untroubled face and, for the first time in her career, felt a profound sense of helplessness. She knew she couldn't touch me tonight. Ethan Grant, I don't care who you are. In a various city, you play by the rules. Don't let me catch you slipping. She snapped her notepad shut, turned, and led her equally frustrated colleagues away. Watching her strong, athletic figure disappear into the night, I rubbed my chin. That cop was a hell of a lot more interesting than that ice block Sophia. Sir, Mac's voice pulled me back. Should I have my men take care of her? His eyes glinted with menace. In his world, anyone who disrespected his boss deserved to disappear. No need. I waved him off. She's just a cop with a strong sense of justice. Kinda cute, actually. Keep her around. She might be useful later. Mac paused, then bowed his head. Yes, sir. I sat back down and grabbed another beer, handing it to him. Uncle Mac, sit down. Have a drink with me. Mac stiffened, quickly waving his hands. Sir, I couldn't. It's against protocol. I say it's protocol, I said, pressing the bottle into his hand. From now on, in the Grant family, I call the shots. I said it calmly, but to Mac, it was like a Category 5 hurricane. He looked up, his eyes wide with disbelief, a film of moisture gathering in them. He had been waiting to hear those words for a very, very long time. Yes, sir. Mac's voice trembled. He didn't refuse again, pulling up a chair and sitting across from me, his back ramrod straight like a soldier awaiting inspection. So, tell me, how are things at home? I asked. Well, Mac sighed. The old man is still going strong. He worries about you. He says you're the only hope for the Grant family, but you. He trailed off, but I knew what he meant. But you were throwing it all away for a woman, a lost cause. He won't be thinking that for much longer, I said calmly. Also, I want a complete audit of all our family's businesses and assets, everything. I want the full report on my desk in 3 days. And that engagement to the Sterlings, I tore it up. From now on, the Sterling family has nothing to do with us. What? Max shot to his feet, his shock even greater than when I'd first given him an order. You and Miss Sterling. I didn't finish, but her meaning was clear. The guy famous throughout a various city as Sophia Sterling's #1 simp. Her expression became a complex mixture of disdain, confusion, and a flicker of understanding. So that's how it was. He was throwing the Grant family's weight around. No wonder even Matt Costello was so deferential. But the weak, spineless heir who was supposedly at Sophia Sterling's beck and call was nothing like the man standing before her. Just a woman who doesn't know her place. She's not worth it, I said dismissively. Max stared at me, dumbfounded. After a full 30 seconds, he slapped his thigh, his face breaking into a euphoric grin. Good. Excellent. It's about damn time. He was so excited his face was flushed. That Sterling girl, she thought just because you liked her, she could walk all over us. The Grant family name is not something she could ever live up to. Sir, it's wonderful that you've seen the light. The old man is going to be ecstatic when he hears this. Seeing his genuine joy, I smiled. This was loyalty, 1,000 times more reliable than the transactional, hollow relationship I had with Sophia. All right, calm down. I said, gesturing to the food. Eat. Yes, sir. Just then my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered it. Is this Ethan Grant? A young, arrogant male voice, dripping with a natural sense of superiority, came through the line. This is Caleb Vance. Here we go. The main character. He didn't waste any time. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat. I heard you and Sophia called off the engagement, Caleb said, a note of undisguised glee in his voice. I did. Good. His tone turned cold. I'm warning you. Stay away from Sophia from now on. She's not the kind of woman a useless piece of trash like you deserves. From now on, I'll be the one to protect her. Wow. Declaring ownership already. Classic hero complex nonsense. Are you finished? I asked. You. Caleb seemed taken aback by my reaction. He paused, then snorted. Remember what I said. Don't bother me, and don't go crawling back to Sophia, or I'll make you regret the day you were born. Okay, I said blandly. Then, before Caleb could spit out his next cringeworthy line, I decisively hung up the phone and blocked his number. Make me regret it. Caleb, you're about to find out that when you mess with me, you'll be the one regretting you were ever born into this world. Sterling Corporation, CEO's office. Sophia Sterling paced her office restlessly. It had been 3 hours since I'd left. She had sent over a dozen texts and made 7 or 8 calls, all of which were met with a wall of silence. This was something that would have been impossible before. In the past, if she so much as posted on social media that she was in a bad mood, Ethan would have been on the phone within 10 minutes, humbly asking what she needed. Today, he dared to ignore her texts and calls. He even dared to say, "You're not good enough for me." The memory of my dismissive gaze and resolute departure stirred a strange mix of panic and fury in her heart. She couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe the man who loved her to his very core would actually leave her. This had to be a new trick, playing hard to get, a pathetic attempt to grab her attention. Yes, that had to be it. Sophia took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She picked up her phone to call her father, Richard Sterling, the chairman of the board. He could put pressure on the Grant family. Ethan might ignore her, but he wouldn't dare disobey his own family. Before she could dial, the office door flew open. Richard Sterling rushed in, his face pale and his forehead beaded with sweat. Sophia, it's bad. It's really bad. Dad, what's wrong? Why are you so flustered? Sophia frowned. She had never seen her father so panicked. It's Ethan. He's really calling off the engagement. Richard's voice was trembling. The Grant family's butler just called me personally. The engagement is officially terminated. And they've frozen all the investment capital they promised us. Several of our biggest projects are dead in the water. What? The words hit Sophia like a lightning bolt. Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. Frozen investments? Sterling Corporation had expanded aggressively in recent years, but their capital flow was tight. They had been relying on the marriage alliance with the Grant family to secure low-interest loans and venture capital. If the Grants pulled the plug, Sterling Corp would. It would collapse overnight. Impossible. He wouldn't dare. Sophia muttered, her face as white as a sheet. She had always believed Ethan's love for her was a blank check she could cash any time. She thought the Grant family's indulgence had no limits. She never imagined the consequences would come so swiftly and so brutally. This is all your fault. Richard pointed a shaking finger at her. I told you to be nicer to him. I told you to just marry him, but you wouldn't listen. Now look, you push him too far, and he's taking the entire Sterling family down with you. Sophia's lips trembled, unable to speak. Just then, there was another knock on her office door. A young man in a simple black suit walked in. He saw the state of Sophia and her father and frowned slightly, but spoke regardless. Mr. Sterling, Ms. Sterling, I'm here to inform you that as of today, I will no longer be serving as Ms. Sterling's bodyguard. The man was Caleb Vance. He had been sent here by an old army buddy to protect Sophia as a favor. Richard Sterling saw him and grabbed his arm like a drowning man clutching a life raft. Mr. Vance, you can't leave. You're a man of incredible skill. There must be something you can do, right? Caleb smoothly pulled his arm away, a hint of pride on his face. I'm just a bodyguard. I don't understand your business dealings. However, he turned his gaze to the devastated Sophia. a flicker of pity and confidence in his eyes. Sophia, don't you worry. It's just the Grant family. They're nothing. The humiliation he put you through today, Caleb Vance, will one day return to him 100-fold. His voice was strong and filled with absolute self-assurance. As long as I'm here, no one can hurt you. Sophia looked up at the man before her. He was dressed in a plain suit, but his confident posture and the world-defying intensity in his eyes gave her a strange sense of security. Especially after being so brutally betrayed and humiliated by me, Caleb's words were a balm to her wounded soul. Caleb, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Don't be afraid. Caleb reached out, intending to pat her shoulder. But Sophia flinched away instinctively. She looked at Caleb, but the image of my cold, mocking face flashed in her mind. The two men blurred together in her thoughts. One who had once catered to her every whim, now casting her aside like trash. The other, appearing out of nowhere, making bold promises. Her heart was in turmoil. Ethan Grant. Sophia bit her lip, her eyes flashing with resentment and defiance. We'll see how you do without me. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back to me. She was convinced I was just throwing a tantrum. Once I calmed down and realized how empty life was without her, I'd come back with my tail between my legs. And when that happened, she would teach me a lesson I would never forget. Meanwhile, the object of her obsession, me, was being escorted by Matt Costello into a various city's most exclusive private club, the Empyrean. The club's general manager, a well-known figure in the city's high society, nearly had a heart attack when he saw Mac respectfully holding the door open for me. He practically scrambled over, presenting a black and gold VIP card. Mr. Grant, your presence honors us. We weren't prepared. This is our Zenith card, sir. Everything in the club is on the house for you always. I didn't take it. Mac accepted it for me. Open up your best suite, I ordered quietly. Yes, of course. The Celestial Suite has always been reserved for you. The manager bowed and scraped, personally leading the way. We took a private elevator to the top floor. The entire floor was a single suite, accessible only with a special key card. The luxury was staggering. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic, glittering view of the entire city. Sir, you get some rest. I'll have the portfolio on the family assets delivered to you in the morning, Max said respectfully from the doorway. Good, I nodded. And one more thing. Run a background check on someone for me. Caleb Vance. I want everything on him from the day he was born. Yes, sir. After Mac left, I walked to the massive window and looked down at the sea of lights below. The Sterling Corporation Tower wasn't far. I could almost picture Sophia's shocked and enraged face. Regret? No, I would never regret this. The ones who would feel regret are you. I picked up my phone and dialed another number. Hey, Leo. An excited voice erupted from the other end. Ethan? Is that really you, man? You're finally talking to me. Leo Martinez, my college roommate, a certified computer genius, and one of the few people the original Ethan considered a true friend. Too bad the original was so obsessed with Sophia that he'd cut off contact with all his friends after graduation. It's me. My voice softened a bit. How have you been? I'm doing okay. Just coding for some small startup. Leo's voice lacked confidence. Quit, I said, cutting him off. I'm wiring you $100 million. I want you to start your own firm. I need you to do something for me. 100 million. I could hear him gasp on the other end. I need you to use every trick you know, spare no expense, and short a company's stock into oblivion. Sterling Corporation. There was a 10-second silence on the other end. He probably thought he was hallucinating. Ethan, are you kidding me? Sterling Corp? Isn't that your fiancée's family company? Leo's voice was filled with uncertainty. She's not my fiancée. Don't call her that again. My voice turned cold. Just tell me, can you do it or not? Can I? Of course I can. Leo's tone immediately shifted to one of pure excitement. Ethan, don't you worry. Forget 100 million. You just give me the resources, and I'll make sure they don't even have their underwear left. But Sterling Corp's firewall was designed by a top-tier international team. Breaching it without a trace will take some time. I don't want it to be without a trace, I sneered. I want it to be loud. I want the whole damn city to know that someone is coming for Sterling Corp. I wanted Sophia Sterling to watch with her own two eyes as the family empire she was so proud of crumbled to dust, piece by piece, at my hands. I get it. Leo's voice was now thrumming with ambition. Ethan, just wait for my good news. Hanging up the phone, the smile on my face widened. Caleb Vance, you want to protect Sophia Sterling? Let's see how useful your army buddies and your fancy martial arts are when the Sterling Empire is collapsing around you. A real war isn't one with fists. It's one with money and power. The next morning, Sophia Sterling arrived at her office with dark circles under her eyes, looking haggard. She hadn't slept a wink. The threat of the Grant family pulling their funding was a sword hanging over her head, giving her no peace. The first thing she did was call an emergency meeting with all her senior executives. The atmosphere in the boardroom was suffocating. The CFO was the first to speak, his voice trembling. Ms. Sterling, the capital flow for 3 of our major projects has been severed. The banks have caught wind of it and are already calling in our loans. If we can't secure new funding within 3 days, the company will have to file for bankruptcy. Boom. The news hit the room like a bomb. How could this happen so fast? It's over. We're finished. Ms. Sterling, you have to do something. Go beg Mr. Grant. I'm sure if you just say the word, he'll change his mind, one of the executives pleaded. Beg him. Sophia's face turned ugly. To bow her head to the man she had trampled under her feet just yesterday? She couldn't do it. All of you shut up. Sophia slammed her hand on the table. It's not over yet. Contact every other investment firm we know. I refuse to believe that without the grants, Sterling Corporation can't survive. Just then, Caleb Vance walked in. He took in the grim faces in the room, his gaze finally landing on Sophia. He spoke softly. Sophia, don't worry. I've already contacted an old army buddy of mine. His family is in venture capital, and they're very interested in your projects. His words sent a ripple of excitement through the room. The executives looked at Caleb as if he were their savior. A flicker of hope returned to Sophia's eyes. Really? Of course, Caleb smiled confidently. I've already set up a meeting for this afternoon at the Empyrean. Trust me, everything will be fine. His calm self-assurance was a balm to Sophia's frayed nerves. Maybe he really could work a miracle. Maybe he was her true hero. That afternoon, the Empyrean, Sophia, Caleb, and a few key executives arrived at the designated private room half an hour early. They waited and waited. An hour past the scheduled meeting time, Caleb's army buddy was still a no-show. Caleb's face grew darker and darker. He made several calls, all of which were immediately disconnected. The atmosphere in the room turned awkward and tense once again. Sophia's patience was wearing thin. Just then, the door to the room opened. A man in a sharp suit walked in. He first bowed respectfully to an empty seat at the table, then turned to Caleb and said coldly, "You must be Mr. Vance. Our Mr. Davison asked me to inform you that he is not available today, or any day in the future. He also requested that you refrain from contacting him again." What? Caleb shot to his feet. Why? We had a deal. Why? The man in the suit chuckled, looking at Caleb like he was an idiot. Because Mr. Davison has no interest in offending a very powerful man for the sake of some small-time nobody like you. A powerful man? Caleb was stunned. That's right. The man looked at Sophia with a hint of pity. Ms. Sterling, that powerful man also asked me to deliver a message to you. He said, the game is just beginning. With that, the man bowed once more to the empty seat and left. The room was plunged into a dead silence. All eyes were on Caleb. Just moments ago, he had been the picture of confidence. Now his face was a pale, humiliated mask, as if he'd been slapped repeatedly in public. His prized connections had proven utterly worthless against this mysterious, powerful man. Who is it? Caleb growled, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white, his eyes burning with shame and rage. Sophia, however, felt a chill run down her spine. The game is just beginning. Those words instantly brought back the image of my smiling eyes as I left her penthouse yesterday. Could it be him? The thought alone was enough to send her into a spiral of dread. Impossible. How could he have as much power? Enough to make even Caleb's connections. As her mind reeled, Her phone began to ring frantically. It was her assistant. Ms. Sterling, it's an emergency. The company's stock. It's in a free fall. A massive, unidentified fund is shorting us into the ground. Our firewall has been breached. All of our trade secrets. They've all been posted on the dark web. Thump. Sophia's vision went black. She collapsed in her chair, her strength gone. She knew it was over. The Sterling family was truly finished. And the architect of it all was, at that very moment, in the celestial suite one floor above, watching the scene unfold in the private room below through a one-way mirror. I raised my wine glass in a mock toast to Caleb and Sophia below. Cheers! This was just the appetizer. The collapse of Sterling Corporation happened even faster than I'd anticipated. Caught between the surgical strikes of a master hacker like Leo and the relentless, overwhelming force of the Grant family's capital, Sterling Corp stock became worthless paper in a single day. Banks came knocking, partners terminated contracts, executives fled with whatever they could steal, and the company headquarters was besieged by angry employees demanding their final paychecks and ruined investors. The once mighty Sterling Corporation became a house of cards in a hurricane. Richard Sterling suffered a massive heart attack from the stress and was now in the ICU. The entire mess fell onto Sophia's shoulders. She frantically called everyone she thought could help, but was met with nothing but cold rejection. It was as if the entire city had turned against her overnight. No one was willing to offend the mysterious and powerful entity orchestrating the Sterling family's downfall. Finally, in utter desperation, she called me. The phone rang for a long time. Just as she was about to give up, I answered. Hello. My voice was calm, without a ripple of emotion. Hearing that familiar yet alien voice, Sophia's defenses crumbled, and she burst into tears. Ethan. Her voice was choked with sobs. I'm begging you. Please, let the Sterling family go. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. What were you wrong about? I asked mildly. I shouldn't have been so cold to you. I shouldn't have ignored your feelings. I shouldn't have. No, I cut her off. Your biggest mistake was overestimating yourself and underestimating me. I could hear her suppressed sobs on the other end. Ethan, please come back. We won't call off the engagement. We could get married right away. I'll give you anything you want. Just please spare my family. She pleaded, her voice as desperate as the original Ethan's had once been when begging for her affection. The irony was delicious. Sophia, have you forgotten? I chuckled softly. You were the one who said I wasn't good enough for you. No, that's not true. I'm the one who isn't good enough for you. I was blind, she cried, desperately retracting her words. Ethan, please just give me one more chance. A chance? I paused, then said slowly, all right. Her crying stopped, a flicker of hope in the silence. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., meet me in front of the Sterling Corporation building. I'll give you one chance to apologize to me in person. I hung up before she could reply. Mac, who had been standing beside me, spoke up hesitant. Sir, are you really going to? Let her off. Let her off. I wagged a finger, a cruel smile playing on my lips. Uncle Mac, for a proud person, what do you think is the most brutal punishment? Mac was taken aback. Then a look of understanding dawned on his face. It's not killing them, I said, looking out the window. It's utterly destroying their pride. I want her to kneel before the very person she looked down on, to beg for my forgiveness like a dog. And then I'll kick her away. The next day, in front of the Sterling Corporation building, the area was swarming with reporters and onlookers. The bankruptcy of Sterling Corp was the biggest news of the year in a various city. At 10 a.m. sharp, a convoy of black Rolls-Royce Phantoms glided to a stop in front of the building, surrounded by a sea of flashing camera lights. A door opened and I stepped out. I was wearing a perfectly tailored Armani suit, flanked by Mac and dozens of bodyguards in black. My arrival caused an immediate uproar. It's Ethan Grant, from the Grant Corporation. What's he doing here? Isn't he the one who caused all this? My God, he's so handsome, even more than the magazines. I ignored the murmurs, my gaze locking onto a lone, isolated figure in the crowd. Sophia Sterling. She wore a simple, plain dress, no makeup, her face gaunt and her eyes bloodshot. The Ice Queen was gone, replaced by a broken woman. She saw me and flinched, her lips parting as if to say something. I gave her no opportunity. I walked right past her as if she were invisible, heading for the building's entrance. "Ethan!" Sophia finally broke, rushing forward and grabbing my arm from behind. I stopped. My bodyguards moved to intervene, but I held them back with a single glance. Without turning, I asked coldly, "Is there a problem?" Sophia's voice was a choked sob. Under the glare of countless cameras and the stares of the crowd, her face flushed with shame, her eyes a maelstrom of humiliation and despair. She knew this was the last chance I was giving her. A final judgment on her pride. She took a deep breath, and then, to the utter shock of everyone present, her knees buckled. Thud! She knelt. The once proud, untouchable goddess who had treated me like dirt was now kneeling at my feet, her tear-streaked face turned up to mine. "I am sorry. I was wrong." The world seemed to stand still. The reporters went into a frenzy, their flashes turning the morning into noon. I slowly turned around and looked down at her, as if observing a pathetic insect. "Oh, you were wrong." I nodded. Then I lifted my foot. As a glimmer of hope entered Sophia's eyes, I used the tip of my expensive leather shoe to gently nudge her hand off my pant leg. But it's too late. I turned and walked into the Sterling Corporation building without a backward glance, leaving the sound of her completely broken, despairing wails behind me. Inside, the lobby of Sterling Tower was empty and desolate. Only Caleb Vance stood in the center of the vast, open space, motionless as a statue. He saw me enter, and his eyes, usually so full of arrogant defiance, were now bloodshot and burning with a near-psychotic hatred. "Ethan Grant," he snarled, like a cornered beast. Well, if it isn't Captain America, I stopped, looking at him with amusement. "What's the matter? Not out there protecting your precious Sophia? She was putting on quite a show on her knees just now." "You monster!" Caleb's body trembled with rage. "Sophia is a good person. Why would you do this to her? If you have a problem, you come at me." "Come at you." I laughed as if he'd said something hilarious. "Caleb, you really think too highly of yourself. In my eyes, you're no different from that dog kneeling outside. You're asking for it." Caleb could no longer contain his fury. With a roar, he exploded forward, the marble floor cracking under his feet. He became a blur, his fist a blur, a brutal, powerful punch whistling through the air as it shot toward my face. The punch held all the rage and power of an elite soldier, enough to tear through a steel plate. He was going to pulp the face of the man who had subjected him to such utter humiliation. And yet, faced with this devastating blow, I just stood there. I didn't even move. The smile on my face didn't waver. Just as his knuckles were about to connect with my nose, a dark figure appeared before me like a ghost. It was Mac. He simply raised his right hand, palm open. Boom! The impact sounded like two speeding trucks colliding head-on. A shock wave erupted from the point of contact, rattling the massive glass panes of the lobby. Caleb's punch, a blow that could shatter stone, had been stopped cold by Mac's open palm. His fist seemed to sink into that deceptively normal-looking hand, unable to advance another inch. How is that possible? Caleb's eyes were wide with disbelief. He could feel the force of his punch vanish as if swallowed by the sea, neutralized by a power far deeper and more immense than his own. This middle-aged man, who had been acting like a simple butler, was a grandmaster whose skill far surpassed his own. A firefly, trying to outshine the moon. Mac looked at Caleb, his eyes dripping with contempt. With a flick of his wrist, he twisted. Crack! A sickening crunch of bone echoed through the lobby. Caleb let out a piercing scream. His entire right arm was bent at an unnatural angle, shards of white bone poking through the skin. One move. The invincible soldier hero of the original novel had just had his arm crippled. Arg! Caleb clutched his broken arm, writhing on the floor in agony, sweat pouring down his face. Mac didn't give him a second glance, stepping back to his respectful position behind me. I walked over to Caleb and crouched down, looking at his face contorted in pain. I told you, fists are the most useless tool of all. You? Caleb gritted his teeth, propping himself up with his one good arm, his eyes filled with venom. Who are you? The Grant family. They couldn't possibly have someone like you. He was finally realizing that the power I wielded was far greater than just the public-facing Grant Corporation. You don't have the clearance to know who I am, I said, standing up. I nudged his broken arm with the toe of my shoe. I'm letting you live, not because I'm merciful. It's because I want you to watch. To watch as everything you hold dear is crushed to dust by my hand. Go back and tell your little army buddies, or whatever connections you have left. Tell them that I, Ethan Grant, am waiting for them right here in Avaria City. I'm curious to see what kind of splash you little frogs at the bottom of the well can make. Done. I turned and walked toward the elevators, ignoring the broken man on the floor. Uncle Mac, buy this building. Yes, sir. From now on, its name is the Grant Vance Tower. The Grant is for me. The Vance is for him. I want him to be reminded of this day every time he passes by, to remember what it felt like to be crushed under my heel like a dog. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing off Caleb's gaze, a look filled with endless hatred and despair. News that I had acquired Sterling Tower and renamed it the Grant Vance Tower spread like wildfire through various cities' elite circles. Everyone was stunned by the sheer, soul-crushing brutality of the move. This was no longer just a business takeover. This was a public execution of pride. It was taking Caleb Vance and Sophia Sterling's dignity and grinding it into the dirt with my heel over and over. In an instant, the name Ethan Grant became a taboo, spoken only in hushed tones of awe and fear. Meanwhile, I was relaxing in the celestial suite at the Empyrean, casually reading through the file Mac had prepared for me. It was everything on Caleb Vance, from his birth in a remote mountain village, to his adoption by an old Taoist master, to his enlistment and rise as a legendary soldier, and his extensive network of contacts. Interesting. I tapped the name circled in red ink, General the Dragon Drake. In the original novel, this dragon was Caleb's most powerful backer, a legendary figure in the U.S. military with immense power. It was under his protection that Caleb was able to run rampant later in the story and ultimately bring down the Grant family. Sir, this General Drake is a sensitive figure. Our sources can't dig any deeper, Max said gravely, a serious look on his face. If you could, he wouldn't be much of a legend, I smiled. The Grant family, while a hidden global power, operated primarily in the worlds of finance and the underworld. Our influence within the core of a nation's military was limited. A direct confrontation was not the smart play. Looks like we'll have to try a different approach. I tossed the file on the table, leaned back, and closed my eyes. Caleb's arm would heal quickly, thanks to his protagonist-level plot armor and medical skills. This humiliation would only fuel his desire for revenge. And the biggest card he had to play was General Drake. He would undoubtedly move heaven and earth to get the general to Avaria City to fight his battles for him. And that's when I would strike. Just when he thinks he's brought in the cavalry, just when he believes his moment of vengeance has arrived, I will serve him a final, unforgettable dose of despair. Uncle Mac. Sir, set up a meeting for me. Who is the guest, sir? Avaria City PD. Detective Isabella Rossi. Half an hour later, in a coffee shop downstairs from the Empyrean, Izzy Rossi sat across from me, looking thoroughly annoyed. She was in civilian clothes today, a simple white t-shirt and form-fitting jeans that showcased an incredible figure. Her hair was down, softening the hard edges of her usual on-duty look and giving her a vibrant, youthful energy. All right, Mr. Grant, what's the big idea this time? I'm warning you, if you're planning anything illegal, I'll be the first to slap the cuffs on you, she said, taking a sip of her coffee, her voice laced with suspicion. Detective, relax. I smiled, sliding a thick manila folder across the table to her. I asked you here to offer you a gift. A career-making gift. A gift. Izzy picked up the folder, her expression skeptical. As she scanned the contents, her beautiful eyes widened in shock. This is... She pointed at the documents, her voice trembling slightly. The folder contained years of meticulously collected evidence of corruption among various cities' officials. Ledgers, audio recordings, videos. The evidence was damning and irrefutable. If this list were to be made public, it would trigger a political earthquake of unprecedented scale. Where did you get this? Izzy stared at me as if I were the devil himself. That's not important, I shrugged. What's important is that with this, you won't just be a deputy head anymore. A promotion or 2, or even 3, wouldn't be out of the question. Izzy's breathing quickened. She was an ambitious and righteous cop. For years, she had wanted to dismantle the web of corruption in the city, but was always stonewalled by a lack of evidence. And now, the case of a lifetime was sitting right in front of her. "But why are you giving this to me?" she asked, her eyes sharp and wary. "What's the catch?" She didn't believe for a second I was doing this out of the goodness of my heart. "Smart," I snapped my fingers. "My condition is simple. I need you to use all of your resources to keep a very close eye on one person. Caleb Vance. I want to know who he sees, who he calls, even what he has for breakfast." Izzy's brow furrowed. "You want me to use police resources to illegally surveil a private citizen?" "Private citizen?" I laughed. "A man who can summon dozens of armed thugs on a whim and has ties to 4 mercenary groups is a private citizen?" I slid another, thinner file across the table. This one detailed Caleb's time as a mercenary overseas. As Izzy looked at the shocking mission logs and graphic photos, her face grew grim. She knew what I was saying was likely the truth. "Fine," she said, taking a deep breath and making her decision. "I'll do it. But this corruption file, I'm reporting it immediately." "Of course," I gestured magnanimously. "It's all yours." Izzy stood up, clutching the 2 folders that held the fates of so many. She gave me one last, long look. "Ethan Grant, I'll say it again. Don't let me catch you slipping." Then she turned and walked away, her steps purposeful. Watching her go, I took a sip of my coffee. Izzy Rossi was a sharp blade, and now that blade was in my hand. "Caleb, your general is coming, isn't he? I've already prepared a welcome gift for him." The next few days in a various city were quiet, but everyone knew it was the calm before the storm. The Sterling family was finished. Sophia sold off every remaining asset to pay off a fraction of their debts. She and her gravely ill father moved into a small, cramped apartment, their fall from grace complete. She vanished from public life. Caleb Vance disappeared as well, but I knew he wasn't idle. Izzy's daily reports were punctual. His broken arm, as expected, had been healed in just 3 days with some sort of miraculous herbal remedy. He then began making frequent calls on encrypted lines to contacts overseas. "The fish is on the hook," I murmured, a cold smile on my face as I read the latest report. "Sir, everything has been arranged according to your instructions," Mac reported from behind me. "Good," I nodded. "Get the gift ready. It's time for General Drake to make his entrance." 3 days later, a various city international airport, VIP terminal. An imposing older man in a severe, high-collared suit walked out, surrounded by a coterie of uniformed high-ranking military officers. Though in his 60s, his back was ramrod straight, and he radiated an aura of iron and blood forged on countless battlefields. The air around him seemed to crackle with authority. He was the legend of the U.S. military, General Drake, the Dragon. At the exit, Caleb Vance was waiting. When he saw the general, his eyes reddened. He rushed forward and snapped to attention with a perfect salute. "General." "Caleb." The general's stern face broke into a rare, fond smile. He clapped Caleb on the shoulder. "You rascal. You get out of the service and don't even think to come visit an old man like me." "General." Caleb looked emotional and aggrieved. I know. I heard all about it on the phone." Drake's expression darkened, a flicker of anger in his eyes. "Unbelievable. On my turf, someone dares to bully one of my boys. Let's go. Take me to this Grant kid who doesn't know his place. I want to see just how much nerve he really has." "Sir, yes, sir." Caleb's spirits soared, his eyes burning with vengeful glee. "Ethan Grant, your time is up." In the face of a national titan like General Drake, all my business acumen and underworld connections were nothing but a bad joke. He could already picture me kneeling before him and the general, begging for mercy. The group piled into a fleet of black government sedans and sped towards the Empyrean. The Empyrean, celestial suite. I was leisurely sipping a cup of premium oolong tea. Max stood beside me, holding a tablet. "Sir, they've arrived. They're in the elevator." I set down my cup, stood up, and straightened my collar. "Show time." Ding. The elevator doors opened. General Drake strode in, hands clasped behind his back, followed by smirking Caleb Vance and a squad of grim-faced military aides. His sharp eyes immediately locked onto me. "You're Ethan Grant?" His voice boomed with the weight of command. "I am." I smiled and even extended a hand. General Drake, it's an honor. Oomph. Drake ignored my hand completely. You're young, but you've got a hell of a nerve, touching one of my men. Your man. I feigned surprise, glancing at Caleb. Oh, you mean him? He was just a disobedient dog. I was just helping you discipline him, General. Insolent. Drake roared. A money-grubbing merchant dares to cast judgment on a decorated soldier of this nation? Men. Sir. Two of his aides stepped forward, their sidearms already drawn and aimed at me. The smirk on Caleb's face grew wider. He looked at me as if to say, see, this is real power. All your money means nothing in front of a gun. And yet, staring down the barrels of two guns, my smile never faltered. I simply, slowly, reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, red leather-bound book. I placed it gently on the table. General, before you have them shoot, perhaps you'd care to take a look at this. Drake frowned, eyeing the book with suspicion. It was plain, with no title on the cover. He gestured, and an aide stepped forward to pick it up and open it. He only needed one glance. The aide's face instantly turned white as a sheet. As if he had seen a ghost, his hand trembled, and the book fell to the floor with a soft thud. The look in his eyes changed from contempt to one of utter, primal fear. It can't be, he stammered, his whole body shaking. What is it? Drake sensed something was wrong. He walked over himself and bent down to pick up the book. When he saw the gold-embossed insignia on the first page and the flowing signature below it, the iron-willed general, a man who had faced down death 100 times without flinching, froze solid. His pupils shrank to pinpricks. The hands holding the book began to shake uncontrollably. This is... For the first time, his voice was laced with undisguised terror. The red book contained only one insignia and one signature. The insignia was a sword piercing the sky, entwined with an American eagle. It was the symbol of America's most secret and powerful Black Ops Directorate, Aegis. And the signature below it hit General Drake like a physical blow. It was the signature of Aegis's founder, one of the last living legends of the Old Guard, a man spoken of only in whispers, General Arthur Grant. My grandfather. Your relationship with General Grant is... Drake's voice was raspy. He looked at me, all his authority gone, replaced by bottomless shock and fear. He finally understood. He understood how the Grant family had built such a colossal empire in just a few decades. He understood why I acted with such impunity. I wasn't some money-grubbing merchant. I was the heir apparent of that family. The prince. He's my grandfather, I said calmly, as if discussing the weather. Boom! The words detonated like a nuclear bomb in the minds of Drake and Caleb. General Drake swayed, nearly collapsing. The officers behind him were pale, cold sweat soaking through their uniforms. They had just pointed guns at General Arthur Grant's grandson. If word of this got out, their careers, their very lives would be over. Caleb was completely catatonic. He stared at me, then at Drake's terrified face, his entire worldview shattering. Ethan Grant. Was General Arthur Grant grandson? The man he saw as his ultimate backup, his ace in the hole, wasn't even worthy of shining my family's shoes? Impossible. This had to be a nightmare. No. I don't believe it. Caleb started screaming like a madman. General, he's lying to you. He's a fraud. Kill him. Kill him now. Silence. Drake spun around and slapped Caleb across the face with all his might. Crack! The sound echoed in the silent room. Caleb was sent flying, hitting the wall and slumping to the floor, blood pouring from his nose and mouth, several teeth knocked loose. You fool! Drake pointed at him, trembling with rage. Do you have any idea what kind of trouble you've caused? He turned back to me, snapped to attention, and delivered a crisp, formal salute. Then, he did something that made Caleb's eyes glaze over with despair. The powerful General Drake slowly, deliberately bowed from the waist. Mr. Grant, I was blind. I have failed in my duty to discipline my subordinate. Please forgive me. Every officer behind him followed suit, bowing in a perfect 90-degree angle. Please forgive us, Mr. Grant. Their voices were united and filled with terror. Caleb lay on the floor, watching the scene unfold, the last spark of light in his eyes extinguished. His greatest asset, his final hope, was now humbling himself before me like a schoolboy caught cheating. He had lost. Utterly. Completely. I ignored Drake and walked over to Caleb, crouching down to look into his hopeless eyes. Now do you believe me? Caleb didn't speak, just stared at me with a hollow, venomous gaze. Don't look at me like that. I patted his cheek. The game isn't over yet. I stood up and glanced at the clock on the wall. By my watch, Detective Rossi should be wrapping things up right about now. As if on cue, the suite doors burst open again. Izzy Rossi, in full uniform, stormed in with a team of heavily armed tactical officers. She didn't even glance at General Drake's contingent, walking straight to Caleb and holding up a warrant. Caleb Vance, you're under arrest for conspiracy, espionage, and illegal contact with foreign paramilitary organizations, endangering national security. You have the right to remain silent. Cold steel cuffs snapped around Caleb's wrists. He didn't resist, simply allowing the officers to haul him to his feet like a marionette. As they passed me, he suddenly stopped and asked in a hoarse whisper, "What? You could have just killed me." Killed you? I smiled. That would be too easy. I want you to spend the rest of your life in a supermax prison. I want you to relive today's nightmare every single day, forever. That is my final gift to you. Caleb's body shook violently. He looked at me, and 2 tears of blood rolled down his cheeks. He finally understood. I had never seen him as a rival. This was all just a game of cat and mouse. And he was the mouse, toyed with and tormented, and he never even knew it. Caleb was led away. What awaited him was the full, merciless weight of the law, and a life spent in a concrete box of endless regret. In the room, General Drake and his men were still holding their deep bows, not daring to breathe. "General," I said coolly. "Sir, your orders, Mr. Grant." Drake flinched, responding instantly. "I don't want a single word of what happened here today getting out." Yes, sir. I understand. I swear on my honor as a soldier, not a soul will ever know." Drake promised fervently. "Your man caused you quite a bit of trouble. I trust you know how to handle the paperwork." I glanced at him. Drake understood immediately. He gritted his teeth and said, "Rest assured, Mr. Grant, as of today, the name Caleb Vance will be scrubbed from all military records. His commendations, his honors, all of it will be nullified. He will be classified a traitor, and his name will be a mark of eternal shame." It was a ruthless sentence. It was as if Caleb Vance had never existed. "Very good." I nodded in satisfaction. "You may all leave now." "Yes. Thank you, sir." As if granted a pardon, Drake and his men practically tripped over themselves to escape, fleeing the Empyrean as if the hounds of hell were on their heels. A storm that could have capsized the entire city had been dissipated with a flick of my wrist. "Sir, your power is absolute." Mac looked at me, his eyes shining with a fanatic's devotion. This was the true master of the Grant family. I waved it off and sat back down, pouring myself another cup of tea. "It's not over yet." "Sir?" Mac looked confused. "Caleb is gone, but the plot of the novel isn't finished." I looked out the window, a playful glint in my eye. In the original story, after Caleb defeated the Grant family, he consolidated all of a various cities' underworld factions, used his connection with General Drake to legitimize them, and formed a massive security conglomerate that monopolized the entire regional market. The biggest obstacle in that plan had been Mac Costello. Now, Caleb was gone, but that little plot point about consolidating the underworld, I think I'll take that for myself. "Uncle Mac." "Sir." "Spread the word. 3 days from now, in the penthouse of the Grant Vance Tower, I will host the Avarius Summit. Invite every underworld boss in this city worth a damn. Tell them, those who bend the knee will prosper. Those who resist will be broken." Mac's body tensed, and then his eyes lit up with an unprecedented fire. He knew what this meant. The young master was about to become the one and only king of Avarius City. "Yes, sir. I'll see to it immediately." Mac's voice trembled with excitement. He had been waiting for this day for a very long time. The news that Ethan Grant was holding his summit at the Grant Vance Tower dropped like a bomb on Avarius City's underworld. The city's criminal landscape was a tangled mess of dozens of crews and bosses, all of whom had been fighting for scraps for decades. None of them answered to anyone. And now, some 20-something rich kid had the audacity to demand they all come and kiss the ring? It was the joke of the century. Who the hell does this Grant kid think he is? Just because his family has money? Does he think we're afraid of a lawsuit? Yeah, he crushed the Sterlings. That's business. On the streets, we speak with fists and lead. He wants us to bow to him. In his dreams. I can't wait to see how he handles this in 3 days. Almost every boss in the city scoffed at the invitation. They decided they would go, not to submit, but to watch the show. A few of the more ruthless ones were already plotting to give me a surprise at the summit, a one-way trip to the bottom of the Averia River. I knew all of this, and I didn't care. In the face of absolute power, all schemes are meaningless. 3 days later, at the penthouse of the Grant Vance Tower, I would show them, in the most direct and brutal way possible, who really ran this city. 3 days passed in a blur. Night fell, and the Grant Vance Tower was a beacon of light. The top-floor ballroom had been lavishly prepared. A long banquet table was laden with gourmet food and vintage wines. But no one here tonight had an appetite. At 8 p.m., the guests began to arrive. They were a rough-looking bunch, thick-necked and covered in cheap jewelry and gaudy tattoos. They gathered in cliques, smoking and laughing loudly, their eyes full of scorn as they looked at the empty head of the table. So where's this Grant punk? Making us all wait for him. A bald, heavily muscled man ground his cigarette into the plush carpet and spat. His name was Leo the Tiger Gallo, a West Side boss known for his brutality. Take it easy, Tiger. Maybe he got scared and isn't coming, a skinny man next to him sneered. A round of derisive laughter followed. Max stood beside the head of the table, his face a grim mask, his fists clenched. If not for my specific instructions, he would have already cut out their tongues. Just then, the grand doors to the ballroom swung open. I walked in, dressed in a casual white suit, a calm smile on my face. I was alone. My entrance silenced the room. All eyes were on me, a mix of surprise, scrutiny, and overwhelming contempt. You, Grant. The tiger stepped forward, pointing at me with his chin. I ignored him, walked to the head of the table, and sat down. I picked up a napkin and slowly wiped my hands, acting as if the room wasn't filled with killers. My blatant disregard infuriated him. Hey, I'm talking to you, you arrogant prick, he roared, kicking over a chair and grabbing a wine bottle as he stomped towards me. Tonight, I'm going to teach you some street etiquette. His men drew weapons and closed in behind him, sneering. The other bosses watched eagerly, ready to see the rich boy get beaten to a pulp. Mac tensed, ready to spring. I held up a hand, stopping him. I watched the tiger approach, my smile unwavering, and lightly snapped my fingers. Snap! The crisp sound echoed in the ballroom. The next second, all hell broke loose. Crash! 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 Every single floor-to-ceiling window around the ballroom shattered simultaneously as figures rappelled down from the roof and smashed through them. Dozens of black-clad commandos rolled into the room, tactical knives gleaming in their hands. They moved with the silent, lethal grace of predators, each one exuding an aura of pure, cold, killing intent, the kind you only get from surviving hell on Earth. What the? The assembled bosses were completely stunned. Before they could even react, the commandos moved. They became blurs, weaving through the crowd, their blades flashing. SHHHNK. Arg. Screams erupted. The tiger, so arrogant moments before, didn't even see the movement before the hand holding the wine bottle was severed at the wrist. Blood gushed like a fountain. My hand! My hand! He shrieked, clutching the stump. That was only the beginning. In less than 30 seconds, not a single person in the room was left standing, except for me and Mac. Dozens of the city's most feared gangsters were writhing on the floor, each with a non-lethal but completely incapacitating wound. Precise, efficient, brutal. The ballroom had become a slaughterhouse. The black-clad commandos melted back, forming silent ranks behind my chair. They dropped to one knee in perfect unison. Dragon's Teeth Squad reports for duty, young master. Their voices thundered as one. The Dragon's Teeth. My family's, my grandfather's, secret, elite private military. Every member was handpicked from the best special forces units in the world. They answered to no country. They answered only to me. This was the true power of the Grant family. I stood up and walked calmly among the terrified, bleeding bosses, my pleasant smile never leaving my face. Gentlemen, Now, are we ready to talk? Silence. Nothing but pained groans and ragged breathing. Every face was a mask of sheer terror. They looked at me as if I were a demon. Their fists, their guns, their viciousness. It was all a child's game in front of the dragon's teeth. This wasn't a fight. It was an extermination. I submit. A boss with a shattered leg was the first to break, trying to kowtow. Mr. Grant. No, Lord Grant. I was wrong. I'll serve you. One was all it took. I submit too. Mercy, Lord Grant. We were blind. Please, give us a chance to live. The pleas became a chorus. The once proud kings of the street were now nothing but begging dogs. I watched them silent. When their cries had died down, I spoke. You want to live? Fine. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room. From this day forward, there's only one voice in Avaria City. My voice. When I say east, you go east. When I say jump, you ask how high. Your turf, your businesses, your men, they all belong to me now. In return, I will give you wealth and status beyond your wildest dreams. But if any of you ever think of betraying me, I paused, my eyes sweeping over the pools of blood on the floor, my smile turning to ice. You've seen what happened to the tiger. That was just an appetizer. I promise you, I will introduce you to a world of suffering you cannot even begin to imagine. My cold words stabbed into their hearts. They had no doubt I would make good on my promise. We swear our undying loyalty to Lord Grant. Every single one of them, including the whimpering tiger, forced themselves up as best they could and roared their fealty. At that moment, the decades of gang warfare in Avaria City officially came to an end. A new era had begun. My era. Excellent. I nodded, satisfied. Uncle Mac, you handle the cleanup. Yes, young master. Mac's eyes shone with excitement and pride. I turned to leave the blood-soaked ballroom. Just then my phone rang. A strange, yet familiar number. I answered. A weak, timid female voice came through. Excuse me, is this Mr. Ethan Grant? Speaking. It's Sophia Sterling. I raised an eyebrow. The ghost of Christmas past. What is it? My tone was arctic. My father. He's not going to make it, she said, her voice choked with desperate sobs. The hospital said he's critical. The doctor said, unless we can get the legendary miracle surgeon to help, there's no hope. And I found out. The miracle surgeon is a recluse, very eccentric. He only responds to one thing. The heart of the ocean necklace that sold for a fortune at that Paris auction 3 years ago. I know you were the one who bought it. Ethan, I'm begging you. For the sake of what we once had, can you please just lend it to me? To save my father, I'll do anything. I'll be your slave for the rest of my life. She groveled. The heart of the ocean, the miracle surgeon. A slow smile spread across my face. What a coincidence. If I remember the novel correctly, this miracle surgeon was none other than Caleb Vance's master, the old recluse who raised him. And the necklace was the key Caleb used to get his master to treat a powerful political figure, which in turn gave Caleb a massive boost in power and influence. Now Caleb was gone, but his master remained. The inertia of the plot was strong. But this time, I was the one moving the pieces. Where are you? I asked. I'm at Avaria General Hospital. Stay put. I hung up, a predatory gleam in my eye. The miracle surgeon, a living legend. I'm very interested to see just what you're made of. Avaria General Hospital, outside the ICU. Sophia Sterling was huddled on a bench in the hallway, looking like a lost kitten. Her face was stained with tears. The doctor had just told her to prepare for the worst. Her only hope now rested on me, a hope she knew was infinitesimally small. Why would I help her? As she sank into despair, a steady set of footsteps approached. She looked up and saw me, the man who was the source of all her love, hate, fear, and regret. I was carrying a fine velvet box. Eitan. She stammered, scrambling to her feet. I said nothing, simply handing her the box. She took it with trembling hands and opened it. Inside lay the heart of the ocean. The massive blue diamond shimmered under the harsh hospital lights, a universe of deep blue captured within its facets. Fresh tears welled in her eyes. She looked at me in disbelief. You're really helping me. She had expected scorn, torment, a demand for a terrible price. She never imagined I would hand over this priceless treasure so easily. I'm not helping you, I said, my gaze level. I'm just curious about this so-called miracle surgeon. Take it and make the call. I'm coming with you. Sophia was completely bewildered. She had no idea what my plan was. But with her father's life on the line, she had no time to question it. Okay, she nodded, clutching the box like it was her last salvation. Using what was left of the Sterling family's contacts, we quickly located the miracle surgeon's whereabouts, a nondescript, isolated retreat deep in the mountains outside the city. When we arrived, an old man with a long white beard and simple, rustic clothes was sitting in a garden, sipping tea, as if he had been expecting us. He glanced up, his eyes briefly flicking over me before settling on the box in Sophia's hands. You brought it? His voice was ancient and raspy. Yes. Sophia hurried forward and presented the box respectfully. The old man opened it, a flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. Tell me who needs saving. My father, Richard Sterling, he's... Sophia began to explain urgently. I held up a hand, cutting her off. I stepped forward and looked at the old master, a playful smile on my face. Doctor, before we get to that, I have a question for you. The old man raised an eyebrow, displeased. Speak. I heard you have a very talented apprentice. His name is Caleb Vance, correct? At the mention of that name, the old man's pupils contracted. A powerful, dangerous energy erupted from his seemingly frail body. Who are you? How do you know of Caleb? His voice was suddenly glacial and wary. Who I am isn't important, I smiled. What's important is that your precious apprentice has been arrested for treason. He'll be spending the rest of his life behind bars. What? The old man shot to his feet, his calm demeanor shattered, replaced by pure shock and rage. Impossible. Caleb is a patriot. How could he commit treason? It was you. You framed him. A terrifying killing intent locked onto me and Sophia. She went pale and stumbled backward in fear. I remained perfectly calm, my smile widening. That's right, it was me. I admitted freely. I didn't just send him to prison. I broke his arm, destroyed his woman's company, and ground every last shred of his dignity into the dust. You court death, the old man roared. He blurred, reappearing directly in front of me, a withered hand clawing for my throat like a specter of death. His speed and power were exponentially greater than Caleb's. But just as the claws were about to touch my neck, a brilliant golden light erupted from a jade amulet I wore under my shirt. The light formed a shimmering shield around me. The old man's hand struck the shield, and a sizzling sound, like water on a hot skillet, filled the air. A plume of smoke rose from his hand. Ark, he screamed, snatching his hand back. His palm was scorched black. Ugh, a protective talisman? He stared in horror at the amulet on my chest. Who in God's name are you? This amulet was a gift from my grandfather at birth. It could withstand a full power blow from any master of the physical realm. You are not worthy of knowing who I am. I stepped toward him, the smile in my eyes turning into a cold, murderous intent. All I know is that you are Caleb Vance's master, and the debts he owes me will be paid by you. As I spoke, dozens of black-clad figures appeared from the shadows surrounding the retreat. The dragon's teeth had the entire mountain on lockdown. The old man looked at the terrifying figures surrounding him, then at the impossibly powerful amulet on my chest. His face finally collapsed into a mask of utter despair. He knew he hadn't just stepped on a tiger's tail. He had kicked a god. He tried to run, but every escape route was sealed. Thump! The legendary miracle surgeon, his pride and power broken, fell to his knees before me. I looked down at him, a predator observing its cornered prey. Now, let's talk again about saving a life. My father-in-law, Richard Sterling. Will you save him or not? End.